Battle for first. Find out if the women's volleyball team was able to bounce IU Kokomo out of the top spot over the weekend.
Run like the wind. We'll tell you how the men's and women's cross-country teams performed in Michigan on Saturday.
And later, grab your popcorn because our reporters will be debating their opinion on what is the greatest sports movie of all time. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline.
Good evening and welcome to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm Sarah Maculin.
And I'm Mike Turk. It was a busy weekend in Point Park sports as we had the cross-country teams competing on the road while both soccer teams and the volleyball teams were playing here at home.
Yeah, Mike, and we're going to start things off with the men's soccer team who had an exciting match on senior day against Asbury. And to discuss more about the game and how the Pioneers played, we bring in Ray. So Ray, Michael started off with this men's soccer team, that game against Asbury.
Absolutely. It was a very close matchup. No scoring until about 5:47 into the overtime where Chikanu got the game-winning goal. Again, awesome play by both seniors, being at senior day, that beating Daniels and Somoza, who both combined for a shutout against the Asbury Eagles.
Now this team has been hot as of recent. 4 consecutive wins in a row for the Point Park men's team. What has been their key to success as we wind towards playoff time coming up?
The biggest success for them has been their ability to find scoring all over. They have 11 players during their 4-game win streak that have scored at least 1 goal and at least 2 more who have gotten at least an assist on this Pioneer team. And just as well, the goaltending has been spectacular for this team, only giving up 1 goal in the past 2 games and giving up 1 or fewer goals since September 22nd.
Now, I want to talk about defense as well, Ray, because Ricardo Dipp just got named Defender of the Week. Now, do you think giving up that 1 goal in 2 games, as you just mentioned, is that more on riding on the defense or the goaltending of this team down the line?
Well, fortunately enough, in that game where they gave up the 1 goal, they had so much offense that it didn't really affect them in the long run, but the defense has been practically shut down, especially in the last game against Asbury. Not only did they stop a lot of goal line chances for the Eagles, but Dipp was also a key contributor in helping getting it up the field.
Well, thanks, Ray, for that report. Now, after riding a program-long 8-game winning streak, the women's team seems to have cooled down as of late.
The women have now lost 3 of their last 4 matches, 2 of those 3 losses coming against conference opponents. Mike, you were at those games. What has been going on with this women's team as of late? I mean, we were talking about a team high in the winning streak, and then it's kind of crumbled as of late.
8-game winning streak. I mean, they've been healthy. They've run into some tough opponents. Every time you play a conference game, it's going to be an important one. But what I have been noticing going to these games, when they played Carlo, they went up 1-0, okay? And then Carlo gets 2 back-to-back goals really quick. They kind of tried to play catch-up for the rest of that game, it appeared, when watching it live. And then they did the same thing a couple days later. They played Malone College at home. They go down 1-0. And then they were playing from behind again, and they just have not been playing well from behind, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Taylor Sprito on a lot to talk about the women's soccer, and that's the one point that she's always hit on is that these Pioneer women, they're striking first, and when they're striking first, they're doing well. But it seems like lately they've been falling behind on the curve, and especially against Asbury with that loss on senior day. I know that probably didn't sit well with the Pioneer women's soccer team.
No, that 0-2 loss, now 6-2 in conference play, and every conference game is important no matter who you're playing. They're playing IU East on the road this weekend. That's going to be a really big one for them because if they drop this one now, they're going to be at 6-3, and they keep dropping these games, Sarah, towards the end. They might not get a home playoff game, but I have confidence in the team that they can come out here. They're behind Carla right now, second in the River States Conference East Division. So it's going to be a big win this weekend if they can go to IU East and get the W.
Yeah, especially before that the non-conference match they have after that. It's just as important to get that another win notch under their belt in case any tiebreakers or anything.
Right.
So when we come back, find out how the cross-country teams fared at the Great Lakes Challenge in Michigan on Saturday.
And later, we have a complete recap of how the volleyball team performed in their 3 matches over the weekend. We'll be right back.
Go. Go to our new website, uvu.plainpark.edu. Go, 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 go.
Join UView and find your herd.
Join EOP. And 3, 2.
Join EOP.
I was just saying, grab them now, or else I will step up.
Yeah.
Join on point with politics. 3, 2, 1.
Join Pioneer Sideline.
Loneliest number that you'll ever do.
Welcome back. The men's and women's cross-country teams competed in their final race of the regular season this weekend.
Yes, Sarah, and it was an impressive showing once again for the number 16th ranked women's team as they continued to make headlines. Now, for more details on both teams, we want to welcome in our cross-country expert, Nick Kosiski.
So Nick, the women placed 6th, and the men placed 18th. We'll get to the men a little bit later, but the women not as good as, I mean, they've been putting up pretty good numbers, first place, second place, but 6th is still decent out of the amount of teams that were there. So what's your takeaway from the women's team at Dearborn?
I think they definitely have the confidence that they need, especially since we're at the end of the season. Like, it's here. It's crazy, but it's here. So I think that 6 is still really good, and I think that they can do a lot better conferences. They still got drive, and I think they might have been saving it. You don't know. They might be stocking ammunition, so looking forward to that, you know.
Now, me and Mike were just talking before we came back from break. 18 out of 19, that's what the men's team placed. Should we be concerned about this men's team?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit concerned. But they're all my bros. So I really don't want to talk trash, but because I know that they got more in them. I do. I just think that they're waiting for that one race, and that one race might be conferences. It kind of has to be, right?
Right. Who do you think could possibly help that Pioneer team, the breakaway there, like you were just mentioning, for the men's side?
To be honest, I think Doug is going to be really up there for Xavier this time. They usually like start out, you know, and then Xavier kind of gets that lead, but I think they're going to be real close. I think runners like Cam, Sean, like those guys are going to come up, and because lots of people, they still haven't like reached that potential, and I think that, you know, this is the time to do it. I think the energy is going to be crazy. I mean, this whole race is going to need a straitjacket. That's how crazy it's going to be.
Thanks, Nick. Always ending on a joke. We appreciate you coming in tonight. Now, the volleyball team had their hands full Friday night as they welcomed in RSC opponent IU Kokomo in a battle for first place.
The Cougars were coming into Pittsburgh as one of the hottest teams in the NAIA, having won 14 matches in a row. We now bring in Nicole Pampino, who has the scoop on how the Pioneers performed at home this weekend.
Nicole, we got to touch on that Kokomo game first. You and I were both on the call for that one. It was a really exciting first match there, but after that it kind of lost its energy. Pioneers got blown out in that second set. Now, was Kokomo just that good, or were the Pioneers having an off night there?
Yes, they were just that good, and they were having an off night. I think it was a little bit of both. I was comparing them, if you remember that broadcast, to Mount Vernon. We played them the night before, and they were a team that was tough, but they're not perfect. They had flaws, but IU Kokomo is as close to perfect as you're going to get. They didn't let anything touch. They were scrappy as heck. They had a strong offense that didn't let up, and they found every single hole in our defense. So yes, they were that good, but we also made dumb errors. You mentioned that first set that was great to watch. That was fantastic. they got to that second set, and I don't know if they got disheartened, I don't know what happened, but they just started to play down, and it kind of went from there. Had they consistently stayed at that level that they did in that first set, I think they would have stood a chance, probably won a set later in that game, and not have gotten swept. But it was a little bit of both there. They're just that good, and we just didn't perform as well as we should have.
Now, I know the Point Park volleyball team really wanted that win against IU Kokomo. I mean, battling for the top in the RSC, but they're still in different divisions, so Point Park's still leading their division. How important is it that they kind of put that loss beside them and look ahead and making sure they stay on top?
I think if they don't put that behind them, they are going to start to fall back again. That IU East victory was still a tough one. They still lost them the first time around. And then once we get closer into the playoff season, that's going to start to matter again. The RSC West, and when that tournament comes, the RSC tournament comes up. So this might not be the last time they see them. I hope they see them again so they can get maybe a redemption like they did with IU East. That would be nice, but they can't let this get to their head. And I think winning on Saturday against Cincinnati Christian, thank God, the worst team in RSC, helps them, just remind them that they are a good team.
Yeah, you mentioned Cincinnati Christian. They had no wins in the conference coming into that game. So I was at the game. I'm still a little frustrated about it. They dropped the first set 30-28, such a high-scoring first set. Now, were they just tired in that game? And we didn't have Ashley Taylor, though.
Right.
But you think they were just tired after a long schedule?
Yeah, and I mentioned that at the end of the Mount Vernon broadcast. I compared it to tennis, how they say in like Grand Slams with the men's matches, you can sometimes go to 5 sets, and they're so tired they lose in the next round. And I think that's what maybe happened a little bit with Kokomo. They were so tired from the Mount Vernon match that it affected their play there, and it probably affected that first set. Also, they struggled to finish, so 30-28, that's what that looks like to me, is just that little fall coming back in again to work against them.
Well, thanks, Nicole. Coming up next, find out how the Penguins goaltender fared in his first game back after suffering a concussion in practice.
And see what team is breaking records in the NHL. All that and more next.
What's one word to describe CAB?
Welcoming.
Community.
Creative.
Experiences.
Family. Openness.
Pineapple.
The Campus Activities Board is a student-run organization that consists of 7 different committees. Each focuses on event planning, marketing, and administrative activities. Join us in organizing the juiciest events on campus, from late-night bingo to festive dances to our team bonding meetings. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Point Park Cap, or like us on Facebook at Campus Activities Board at Point Park University.
Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. I'm Josh Troop alongside Jess Paterchak.
Defending his decision to kick out 15 Cuban diplomats from the United States.
Thanks, Allison. Fitness on Demand has returned to Point Park.
Residents fear that Mount Agung will have a repeat of 1963's eruption.
2-star NFL quarterbacks made the headlines this week after wrapping up.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's your news tonight. For Nick Tomarello, I'm Alex Grubbs. Have a great night.
Welcome back. The Pittsburgh Penguins hit the road last week to Canada to face the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And the Steelers stayed at home this weekend to work the kinks out during their Week 7 bye. Let's send things over to Kiera Fry, who has the scoop on what's going on in Pittsburgh sports. Kiera.
Matt Murray made a statement as he returned to the ice after being out with a concussion from practice. Murray shut out the NHL's hottest offense in the Penguins' 3-0 victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs. Going into Thursday's game, the Leafs led the NHL in scoring with a 4.7 points per game average. Offensively, Evgeny Malkin scored 2 of the Penguins' 3 goals and had an assist. The Penguins' win ended the Leafs' winning streak at 5 games. This was the first game of a 10-day road trip for the Penguins, and tonight they're playing the Edmonton Oilers. Moving from the ice to the football field, the Pittsburgh Steelers had their bye week coming off a 28-21 win over the Bengals. There have been rumors that the Steelers' bye week would bring Le'Veon Bell back into the locker room, but there was no sign of Bell at the team meeting and film review or practices this past week, and no sign of him on this Monday's practice. Missing the first 6 games of the season, Bell has already forfeited over $5 million of his $14.54 million salary, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. In Bell's absence, James Conner has produced Bell-like numbers. Conner rushed for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Bengals in the Steelers' most recent game. This was the 3rd time this season that Conner put up this impressive stat. According to ESPN, Conner currently ranks 6th in the NFL with 453 yards rushing. The Steelers will be back in action this Sunday at Heinz Field, where they will face the Cleveland Browns.
So, Kiera, the Steelers managed to slide into first place this weekend without even playing a game while on their bye week. Now, do you think this is something that they can maintain when they actually do play?
I really do think that they can maintain this top spot as long as they don't let the continuing Le'Veon Bell thing influence them, and the fact that they tied the Browns last time. So I think that that would also encourage them to do even better this week and work harder, and I think that if they take a more positive approach to it instead of looking at it in a negative way, that they'll be able to do that.
Well, thanks, Kiara. Now the World Series matchup is set, and the best-of-7 series between the Boston Red Sox and the Los Angeles Dodgers begins tonight.
And while baseball is wrapping up, the hockey season is in full force, and one team is already making headlines. Let's toss things over to Taylor Spirito with the latest in national sports. Taylor?
Thanks, Mike and Sarah. Baseball season is drawing to a close, and the stage is set for the World Series. For the first time in MLB history, the Boston Red Sox will face off against the Los Angeles Dodgers in a best-of-7 matchup that starts tonight at Fenway Park. Boston is coming off of an upset of last year's champs, the Houston Astros, and Los Angeles is looking for redemption as they made it to the World Series last year but was taken down by Houston in 7 games. Their repeat appearance comes after they knocked off the Milwaukee Brewers in 7 games. Game 1, like I said, starts tonight in Boston. Onto the ice, records are made to be broke, and that's exactly what happened this week in the NHL. The Tampa Bay Lightning set a league and franchise record by recording 33 shots on goal in a single period in their game versus the Chicago Blackhawks. The face of the Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid, set a record with factoring in on his team's first 9 goals to start the season, scoring 4 of those himself. Toronto Maple Leafs star Austin Matthews broke NHL legend Wayne Gretzky's record of the youngest player to put up multiple points in the first 5 games of the season. Finally, Pittsburgh's favorite flower, Marc-Andre Fleury, has moved to number 10 on the all-time wins list with 408 under his belt. And of course, basketball season is officially underway and LeBron James has made his Los Angeles Lakers debut. But that didn't stop them from dropping their game against the the Portland Trailblazers, 128-119. James's old team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and his new team are 2 of 5 teams that are left without a win.
Now, Taylor, the World Series is starting tonight. Chris Sale will go against Clayton Kershaw. This is a matchup fans have been wanting to see all season long. What are your expectations for the series? Who do you have winning, and who are you rooting for in this one?
I mean, I'm a little biased. My father is a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, so for his sake, I kind of have to root for them. But I think that this could go all the way to 7 games. You saw Los Angeles take the Brewers all the way, and you saw the upset that happened with Houston. They had a little bit of a controversy. There was a catch that happened in right field, or that didn't happen because of fan interference claim. But honestly, I think with this game, anything can happen. With this series, anything could happen. But like I said, Los Angeles is looking for redemption. They made it this far last year. I could see them going all the way this year, but I do think the only thing I could say for sure is that this series is going to go to at least 6 or 7 games.
Well, thanks, Taylor. I know we're all looking forward to watching this series, go to 7 games. So coming up next, the list of sports-related movies is endless.
But which sports movie is the best? Our reporters will debate next. Don't go anywhere.
The United Student Government at Point Park University, working since the 1970s to solve the issues that matter to you. What concerns do you have about the university? Student life, safety, food service. Send us an email to studentconcerns@pointpark.edu or stop by our office on the 7th floor of the Student Center. You can also attend our weekly open meetings on Mondays at 3:15. Follow us on social media at USG_PPU for more. The United Student Government. By the students. For the students.
The Point Park Sports Network, bringing you live coverage of Pioneer Athletics on Stretch Internet, the home of the River States Conference and the NAIA. Subscribe today for complete access to the Point Park volleyball, baseball, basketball, and soccer teams. Watch live and on-demand broadcasts, and don't miss a minute of Point Park Athletics. Head to pointparksports.com/live for broadcast listings. The Point Park Sports Network, your streaming home for Point Park Athletics.
3, 2, 1.
Please visit our website. Please, it's a nice website. Please visit our website. Please.
If you have ever watched television, whether accidentally or on purpose, UView is for you.
Welcome back. Everybody loves movies, and here at the Pioneer Sideline, many of our favorites are those centered around sports.
Yes, Mike, some of the greatest moments and tremendous comebacks in sports have been recreated for the big screen. But which do our reporters think is the best? To debate for the case of the week, we have Kiara Fry, Nicole Pampina, and Taylor Sprita. All girls this week. I love it.
I'm outnumbered, but I'm ready to roll with it. Ladies, now we've seen some classic sports movies over the years like Field of Dreams, but you also see some comedies like Slapshot or Happy Gilmore. Everybody can quote that all day. So I want to get your opinions. It can be any kind of category here, what your favorite sports movies are. So we'll start on the end here tonight.
What it
Nicole.
is and go off, I can do that definitely. A League of Their Own pioneered the way for women in sports. For people who haven't seen it, men go off to World War II, women go play baseball. And it kind of chronicles that first year and all the backlash and the sexism that they still face. And these women could play ball, and it is such a heartwarming film. It shows that sister rivalry. It shows Dottie, the main character, didn't really want to be there, but she was so great. It has so many themes and so many messages that I can't wait to pick apart, but and I love baseball. A League of Their Own is where
There's no crying in baseball.
There's no crying in
famous
baseball.
Quote there.
Right.
There, Taylor.
So I picked The Sandlot. It's a classic movie. So much nostalgia plays into this. There's so many iconic lines that you can quote, like you said with Happy Gilmore. You know, you're killing me, Smalls. I say that on a daily, and there's not been one person that has not said, hey, what's that from? So I think it's an iconic movie that everyone has at least seen once, even if they don't really remember it. And I just think it's an iconic movie.
Now, Kiara, we talked about yours a little bit before we came back from break. A couple of us haven't even heard of it, so can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the movie that I chose was Hoop Dreams. I would normally go with a football movie because I'm a sucker for football movies, but I think that what sets Hoop Dreams apart is that it's actually a documentary, and it's focused on a high school sport, and it follows two inner city boys from Chicago through their struggles in their life from their freshman year of high school to when they are trying to receive college scholarships to play basketball and get out of the ghetto.
And that's a good one because a lot of the movies we talked about, despite The Sandlot, are professional sports based, and I like the ones about like high school getting back because those are tough times, and that's kind of mine. I chose Remember the Titans because it's just, to me, I like Nicole's point that it's more, there's more than the sport. This movie was more about, not just about football, it was about bringing people together. I mean, so much racial tension during that time. And literally you had people going back and forth. They wouldn't even want to share the same locker room with people because of the different races. And this movie was not only a great football story, but people that aren't even fans of football or sports can watch this and understand how people go from complete opposite ends to their brothers. I mean, the greatest point in that movie is when he's in the hospital and he's like, can't you see the family resemblance when they're two different races, but they become like brothers, and that's... I'm a sucker.
Moment.
It is. I cry every time. I cry every time.
I almost cried right there. But I have the 1976 Oscar winner for Best Picture, Rocky, with Sylvester Stallone. Put Sylvester Stallone on the map. Fantastic movie. So many iconic scenes in there, and everybody knows the music when it comes dun 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 dun, and the shot of him in Philadelphia running up the stairs, so iconic. And it just set off a franchise there with this. This character will not die. It's going to be Rocky in space next. But obviously, it's 8 total films now. The most recent one going to be Creed 2. But it just set off a whole kind of, I don't want to say universe, but sure, boxing universe. And that first one is just so good. So many iconic characters in there with Adrian, Mickey, Apollo Creed. But you're squinting your face a little bit on that
How much Rocky is too much Rocky? I think
that's a good
2 or
point.
3 is too much, and we went up to 8, maybe 9.
They did with
now.
Tommy Guns. That was a little too far when he was street fighting at the end there. That's when it got bad. But we're talking individual films here. So that's why I'm picking Rocky there at the beginning.
But it's been beat like a dead horse. It's just into the ground. Like everybody knows it. It's so tired. I understand. It's a great first movie.
But people know it over A League of Their Own. Not everybody knows that movie.
I bet.
I've seen that movie. That's a good movie.
Doesn't mean it's the best.
Everybody knows
I think
that.
the biggest thing with sports movies, when you're looking at iconic sports movies, is the one people can relate to. And I think we all have choices of people that can relate to. Maybe Rocky, not so much. I don't know.
He's training. He gets beat, and then he trains to get to the top, to get back into the ring
boxing, though,
to
there's
fight.
only a select group of people that can really put in that dedication
Everybody's
and
seen
stuff.
the movie.
Whereas there's
seen
people that have been, females that have been through having to work through prejudice. With Remember the Titans, I mean, the racial tension. I mean, you mentioned in your movie, Kira, growing up in the ghetto and having to stay away from that kind of stuff in order to further their careers and pursue a sport. I mean, Sandlot, they're all such happy kids, but they do.
We can relate to the
You can relate to
Yeah.
going to the fair with your friends and playing baseball.
Trying your
like
first dip and throwing up everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody can relate to that.
I think you're the only one that can relate to that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get into, I mean, we all kind of gave our reasonings, but there's some great sports movies that we haven't even talked about. I mean, Turk brought up Happy Gilmore. That's one like you can always watch and people know verbatim, but there's so many good ones. Like we were going through the list.
Yeah.
I mean, you have We Are Marshall. That's another like football movie. I mean, Turk, you had other ones too.
Space Jam. We were talking about it before the show. That's still a fantastic sports movie, and I'm really interested to see what LeBron James does with it coming up in the future. But even like Field of Dreams too, if you want to get to tear-jerky again.
Sarah, yours reminded me of The Blind Side.
Yes.
Why didn't anyone talk about The
That's
Blind
good.
Side? That's a great movie.
And I think too, a lot of us pick classic sports-related movies. I mean, that Blindside's more of a newer one, but it's the oldies that people like. I remember the Titans. I picked that because over the summer on vacation, like I literally sat in instead of going out because Remember the Titans was on. I couldn't miss it because it's a tearjerker. It's one you can never. And I think those are the best. That's what judges the best sports movies is ones that you can watch endlessly and not get sick of.
Nostalgia plays a huge factor in like everything we do at this point in our lives. So, all of ours are kind of older, like you said. So I know when I was going through my list, I was like, well, I love The Sandlot, and I don't even have a DVR anymore, but it was the first thing I recorded on my DVR, and I still sit there and I have my sunflower seeds because I played, and I'm like, oh wow, I remember when I used to do this with all of my softball friends, and it was like he's tearjerker.
I cry at the end of A League of Their Own. Whenever, like we said, nostalgia, whenever they're in the museum for women's baseball and they sing their song, the All-American Girls, like, I cry at that, which is very unconventional because it's just like, they had this moment together and they went through this experience together and they were reflecting on it and some of them had passed away and like the son is in one of it and it's just like, I cry like a baby at the end of that movie because it means so much. And then just the principle itself, like you said, Sarah, sports are greater than themselves. I feel like some people that are anti-sports, and we run into that, their arguments always, it's just a bunch of like men running down a field throwing a ball. And it's not. It's being selfless. It's being a part of something greater than your own. It's everything, emotion that comes with it. And I feel like the movies that embody that is what's important more than anything. And that's why I think that movie does. And then it blazes the way for athletes like Serena Williams, who were born out of women being allowed to play professional sports, to get on my soapbox there for a second.
Now, Taylor, you mentioned you had a list, that Sandlot was on your list, and it ended up, did some of you guys also have other ones that you were torn between?
Well, we talked about Miracle on Ice before we came on air.
Default.
It's a default. It's a cop-out, but it's still a great movie. I also thought of, because I'm a hockey person, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Gotta love that.
It's a
of
classic.
course. Bad News Bears, just to fit in with like the
Bears,
Sandlot and stuff like that.
I'm going to be a
Benchwarmers.
hypocrite, The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg.
Yes.
That's a good one.
I was thinking, because when we talked about the current ones, I was thinking of Invincible, and that's a really good movie that I just saw recently, but you don't think of because we haven't seen those as many times. So I'd like to think maybe 5 years down the road, those may become some of the best movies. But I think that's all we have time
That was a
for
good
this
debate.
week. That
I
was
like that
a
one.
great debate. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time
The same Pioneer channel.
and the same Pioneer sideline.